Ladies and gentlemen, we are back for episode 5. I'm Turn.
I'm Bark.
And we're still here, and time is still rolling. Episode 5, really pumped about this one. Lighter topic, encouraged by Mrs. Holmes, colleague of ours at the middle school. So shout out to Miss Holmes. Episode 5, the history of toilet paper.
We thought it was pretty relevant since everybody's buying a whole bunch of it, that we would talk about. It's something that we take for granted or that as a necessity. And we thought about, how long has it been around? Do we really need it? What did we do before? Because it's obviously been a problem that humans have had for thousands of years. Is how to take care of ourselves after we're done doing our business. But toilet paper is not thousands of years old, apparently. So we found out. So.
What's interesting, too, is we had this debate because we were talking about how to organize this. And so we're going to do it chronologically. We're going to start with the oldest civilizations that kind of have how they take care of themselves, and then we'll get to where toilet paper is introduced. So I believe, Barger, you're going to start off with Greece and Rome? Yeah,
so the sources that we have, the difficult thing about toilet paper is that nobody sat down and wrote the history of how we clean ourselves going to the restroom. We have a lot of swear words that deal with going to the restroom, but we don't write a history of it. There's a lot of great things in our lives that nobody takes the time to write down, and then we all kind of end up hundreds or thousands of years later going, why is that the way we do things? Like I always talk to my kids in class about, think about the first guy who looked at a cow and said, I'm going to go milk that cow. And what everybody else in his tribe said, they looked at like, don't talk to Bill anymore. He's weird. And then 300 years later, he's like, y'all laughed at me and my family's rich. But anyway, the Greeks.
That's impressive.
The Greeks used to use shards of pottery. And now the word shard doesn't sound very friendly, but I was reading the account, they were like rounded shards, but they would often write the names of their enemies on them, as they would use that to clean themselves after they went to the restroom. So it's very of the same nature as the fact that where you can buy like toilet paper with like politicians' faces on it, or like other people that you don't like. And then the Romans, everybody knows about the Roman baths and these like public bathrooms that they had. What they would use is they had a sponge on a stick, but it was kind of a communal, in a public bathroom, it would be like, there would just be like a couple. It wasn't like you got your own personal one and you're obviously not going to carry one around all day, like in a little satchel on your side. But it would sit in a bucket of salt water and vinegar in between uses.
I don't know if I'll be able to eat those chips the same ever again. So the first recorded use of toilet paper is actually found in a series of books, a volume called Science and Civilization in China by Joseph Needham. And he has a marking from a Chinese scholar, Yan Zahitu, in the 2nd century CE, where the man wrote paper on which there are quotes or commentaries from the 5 classics or the names of sages I dare not use for toilet purposes. Just really quick, the 5 classics are the 5 books that kind of revolve around Confucianism, the mainstream religion of China in the day, a man named Confucius who kind of told people how to live their lives. The second one we have, same volumes of those books, actually happened in 851 CE. An Arab traveler traveling to China is said to have quoted saying they do not wash themselves, like we talked about, right? With Barker and the sponge, with water after they make their necessities, but only wipe with paper. And so we talk about this, like China had toilet paper in the 6th century CE, I mean, all the way back to the 2nd century, and then recorded. So then we looked up, we're like, well, what other types of things did people wipe with, right? Because, I mean, you got to wipe with something, right? So what I found was, if you were rich and you had money to spend on these, like toilet paper is a luxury, it wasn't a necessity, even though going to the bathroom is considered a necessity, like you have to have this. And if you're rich, you could wipe yourself with wool, lace, or hemp. If you weren't, though, one of the first things they said was if you were defecating like in a river, you would just use your hand to wipe everything out. I mean, I don't really. Which one do you use? Your non-hand, right? Because it's
that's the story behind why Arabs don't shake. That's why we shake with the right hand, because the left hand was for cleaning. Because most people who aren't left-handed, people like you, that would be their non-dominant hand. So that's why historically, that's where like you always shake with your right hand, or as a punishment, thieves would have their right hand cut off. So then you only have your dirty hand.
Yeah. But other things would be like rags. This one got me wood shavings. Leaves, I feel like, are pretty standard. Like that's kind of in a pinch. Grass, stones.
Small stones.
There, yeah, I guess. Moss, that kind of was like, all right, I could see using moss. Like that's soft, you know. Water again, yeah, kind of snow. That's a no-go for me. Like that's just asking for shock. Ferns, plant husks. That just sounds painful. Fruit skins. I was trying to think of like a skin, like an orange, maybe, like so it smells nice down there. Maybe I don't know. Your farts would be like citrusy.
I don't know.
Next one, seashells. Like I could get the scraping thing, but most of us have seen a seashell and they either break or they're pretty sharp. And then corn cobs. And Barker, you're gonna get into corn cobs right now from our next time period up.
So one of the things that we leave out when we talk about the Great Revolutionary War is this, and that was the kind of germane way to take care of yourself in the American colonies was to use a corn cob, but it wasn't an old dried out corn cob because that would be abrasive. So it was a relatively, I guess, fresh corn cob. And it was also interesting. Turner and I went to DC together, and we went to Mount Vernon, and we actually saw how there's what these look like guard posts, but they're not guard posts; they're outhouses, and they're like 4 or 5 seat, outhouses where you could go like with 4 of your closest buddies and go hang out and do your business. And it's just interesting because like below them, they emptied into like a tray. And that tray would be pulled out into the field below it and used as fertilizer. So it kind of makes sense because like you wouldn't just urinate and defecate in these things. You would throw your food garbage or other garbage away that would decompose, and then it's composting. And then you just take it out into your field, and then instead of like today we use chicken or cattle manure, where back then they were like, well, why let something that's obviously going to be fertilizer go to waste? And so like at Mount Vernon, you can see that. Probably not one of the highlights of the tour for you, but one of those odd history nerd things that we found amusing.
Yep. And so what interesting actually, we were there 5 years ago. That was it popped up on my Facebook, so pretty fun stuff. And then you were going to talk about the man who is credited with the first commercial toilet paper.
Yes, and a quick aside, Ms. Holmes sent a follow-up question about bidets, which are becoming more and more prevalent in America due to the toilet paper shortage. So they started in France in the late 1700s, and it was more of a chamber pot, not what we know today. The modern bidet in America kind of came around in the 1950s, where you can kind of hose yourself off. But the word bidet is apparently French for pony, because that's what you would have to, it was kind of like riding a pony when you would use one. But the man who is credited with the first kind of commercial toilet paper is Joseph Gayetti in kind of the late 1857, but he didn't market it. It was sold like ply by ply, like piece by piece, like in a stack, like napkins. And it was medicated, and it was sold as a like a medicinal aid, not as a, every time you go to the restroom, use this. It's like if you're having some problems down there, you're a little tender, like, buy Gayetti's medicated paper. So
a modern day,
kind of got the ball rolling.
Would be a comparable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then what's interesting is, so he makes the first one. It's, again, aloe for hemorrhoids was his kind of piece. It's made from Manila hemp. And then we go on to a couple other people. In 1890, Irvin and Clarence Scott start the Scott Paper Company, not to be confused with Dunder Mifflin, where they are the first ones to actually put toilet paper on a roll. But the problem is that this roll, you know how today when we have toilet paper, we can rip off a sheet, right, and use it. This was just a roll of continuous paper. There was no break in the sheet. And so people would just like unroll it and go up from there. So Scott Wheeler actually has the first patent for in the United States for TP and a dispenser that would go one sheet at a time. As you can see behind Barker, you can see again wrapping our toilet paper roll. Yep, exactly. So you can see his piece actually came off sheet by sheet. Again, a big deal. Now, what I found fascinating was the next development. So Wheeler does this. I believe he's like 1891. I want to say is when he patents that. Right there, 1891, September 15th. Perfect. In the 1900s, a company in Wisconsin called the Northern Paper Mills actually patents a paper for your butt that's called splinter free. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever been like wiping and be like, I hope I don't get a splinter down there, because then I'm going to have to go back to Mr. Gaetti and get his medicated wipes. So, they made splinter free. By 1943, their new slogan was soft and oh so gentle.
Yeah, and the Scott brothers, when they started selling, they didn't go out and sell to consumers right away. They actually sold to luxury hotels and places like that. So again, toilet paper starts as a luxury item in the United States, not as a necessity. It begins to gain prominence kind of in the 20s, the 1920s, the roaring 20s. Another additional question that was asked of us was, what about soldiers, like, toilet paper for soldiers? And I went back, the earliest I could find was in like the World War II era. They began putting toilet paper as like an accessory in like the ration packets. And I know that today that modern soldiers do get an allotment of toilet paper with an MRE or their meal ready to eat when they're out in the field, which, MREs are designed to kind of like keep you from going to the bathroom as regularly as possible because you're busy doing other things like defending freedom, and you don't want to get caught with your pants down. So, toilet paper usage goes up as flushable toilets become more prevalent, because before that, a lot of people would just use scrap paper like newspapers. You would read it, and then once you're, what are you going to do with an old newspaper? Like, we have these people that, that save them, and then you end up with all this newspaper, and you go, what do I do with it? And so back then, the logical answer was, well, if I'm done reading it, I can use it for another purpose. And the same thing was true of the Farmer's Almanac, which is why it used to have in the corner, there used to be a hole so that you could actually hang it on a wire in your outhouse. And when it was done, you could just rip the pages off, use them, so that before recycling was, recycle, reduce, reuse, the reuse portion was happening in America. Or the other one that people talk a lot about was the Sears Roebuck catalog, which they stopped producing in 1993. So sorry, guys.
Yeah. But that had a lot of paper on it. And what's interesting actually too is early toilet paper, I left this off earlier, but early toilet paper makers actually put their name on it in a watermark. And so you knew whose toilet paper you were using. And again, they also talked about the damage that ink could do to, that part of your body. And that was one of the reasons why toilet paper started to kind of to build. So again, we're going through this toilet paper shortage right now. And they say that, I believe the average American, I wanted to say was, 100 rolls. Average American household's like 100 rolls a year or something like that.
One person is 100 rolls a year.
One person's 100 rolls per year, right? So again, buy what you need. Don't overbuy. Save some for the people who really, really need it. Or be ecologically friendly and go ahead and get yourself a bidet.
Yeah. And one of the other things they've talked about is this. There's rumors flying around that with China shutting down their factories, there's going to be a shortage of supply. 90% of toilet paper is made in the United States of America. Only a small portion, I think like 4% of our total toilet paper usage comes from China. So it's actually really, 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 really a small percentage, if it even is disrupted. My wife's cousin works at a toilet paper mill in Oregon and says that they made 24,000 pounds and that's 50 pounds is enough for a person per year. So, I mean, math geniuses do the math. That's enough for a lot of people. And that's just in like one 12-hour shift. So like the idea that there's not enough toilet paper in America is really fallacious. The guy behind me over there, sorry, is Mr. Whipple, who said, please don't squeeze the Charmin. And in 1978, they did a survey of like famous people in America, and he came in third place behind Nixon, Billy Graham. Those were the two above him, and he came in ahead of the actual president, Jimmy Carter, of the time. So more people knew the Charmin guy than knew the actual president of the United States by facial recognition. But now Charmin has replaced them with this is the only mascot of a toilet paper, and feel free to prove me wrong in the comments. These are the only mascots that I really can think of and find the ultra soft and ultra strong Charmin bear families that we're all fairly familiar with. That when this first started, people were like, well, you don't want to advertise toilet paper because we don't talk about that. Because America's a little prudish. We're a little prudish about those kind of things. But now we have these bears that are dancing around, talking about, cleaning their booties.
His hiney's clean. Oh yeah, he's Charmin clean.
That's right. Which the name Charmin, apparently when they first tried their product, one of their workers came out and said, it was like charming. They asked how the experiencing was, and he said charming, and then charming somehow became Charmin.
I like it.
So,
I like it a lot.
Yeah, the more you know.
Exactly. So anyway, that is our history of toilet paper in about 18 minutes, maybe a little bit less. And we are looking for new topics. This was really fun. Thank you again, Ms. Holmes, for giving us like a lighter topic. That's what she suggests in these times. And, our schedule is about to change. We're about to get classes ramped back up after our spring break week. So these might not be as frequent, but we're going to try and keep pumping them out because they're kind of fun. So I'm going to post this on my Instagram story along with my Facebook story. Barker's going to do the same. Feel free to leave us comments. I'm going to leave a question section. Leave us anything you guys are interested in talking about. It can be something like this, uplifting, right? It can be something fun, goofy, silly. We have no problem. This is actually really fun to research. So, Barker, anything before we finish off?
We've had panics before. In 1973, what's his name? Johnny Carson.
Yeah.
Right, of the Tonight Show was talking about funny things in the news, and a congressman had made a comment about there potentially being a shortage, and he mentioned it just kind of like as a joke online on the evening broadcast, and it triggered a panic like this. You know what I mean? So it's really interesting the power that the media has on us, that we all start freaking out and say, this panic buying, we just all need to slow our rolls.
Aha.
And just, go take it piece by piece.
Ding. But the thing about it too, that the congressman who said it actually said, if we don't do something, there could be a shortage. And so then Johnny Carson brought that up. And because he brought that up, we actually did have a shortage for months because people went out and panic bought. So anyway, we're looking forward to your suggestions, anything you guys want. And until next time, I'm Turn.
I'm Bark.
And we're going to be here for a long, long time. Good night, everybody.
Stay safe.
Be well.